Welcome back to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Jackson Tolliver. Thanks for tuning in. We got the Celtics season kicking off tomorrow. I am beyond excited for the Boston Celtics and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to try and repeat a championship for the first time since I believe it was Bill Russell's guys back in the 70s, which is hard to believe considering all the great eras that the Celtics have had. They haven't repeated as champions in quite a while. So the Celtics will start their journey tomorrow to be the first team to do that in quite some time. The first NBA team also, since the Warriors did it when KD was on the team in 2017 and 2018. It's hard to do. Since that Warriors team in 2018, no team, since the Raptors finals, that is, no champion has ever made it past the second round since then. And that was in 2019, so it's been a while. It's hard to win in the NBA, but I think this Celtics team is primed to do it. We'll get into all of that, but first I want to start off with reflecting on yesterday's disaster class across the pond in London from the New England Patriots, losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars 32-16. Let's talk about it. So I, for one, as I said in last week's episode, I thought the odds makers were really wrong here. The Patriots were 6-point underdogs going into the game. Jacksonville 1-5, same record as the Patriots. They really struggled. Their secondary was the worst in the NFL. I thought Jerod Mayo was going to light it up against them, which he did. Jerod Mayo had some really impressive passes, as always. Had another nice go route to Kayshon Boutte later on in the game. A lot of potential and chemistry brewing between those two guys, which I love to see. But the problem here in this loss, the majority of it to me was coaching. I thought Jerod Mayo was great. I thought the offense was fine for what it was, barring the play calling. There was too much running going on when the run game just simply wasn't working. What was working was Jerod Mayo finding passes over the top, and just letting him use his arm. It's as simple as that, or letting him scramble for yards. That's what was working, and for whatever reason, I understand that you want to be, you don't want to be a one-dimensional offense. You want to have multiple aspects of your game that will allow you to beat the other team, but the run game wasn't working. So why are we still calling run plays on 2nd and 10, first down? It just didn't make any sense to me. Jerod Mayo was playing remarkably well. The receivers were doing all right, besides Jalen Polk, who we'll get into in just a second. It just didn't make any sense to me why they went that route of trying to force the run game so bad that they just shot themselves in the foot. Got out to a hot start in this one, which I know a lot of people said was kind of key for them to win this game, get out to a hot start, because they haven't done that at all. You think like last week against the Texans, they started down 0-14. So if they had started off quicker, maybe they would have been able to win that game, hang in there. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are a much worse team. So I thought if they get off to a hot start, get up by multiple possessions early in the game, it'd be hard for Jacksonville to come back, which they did. They did get up 10-0 to start the game, and then the second quarter, everything just went to hell. Defense became so undisciplined. The Jaguars were beating them with the same things basically every time, which is just the run game. The run defense here is atrocious. Tank Bigsby was running, I believe he had a 100-yard game yesterday. A couple touchdowns as well on top of that. He just cooked. We knew that the run game would definitely take some hits because of some of the guys that they lost, right? Jawan Bentley, super underrated guy on this team, vocal leader, team captain, has led the team in tackles, I believe, for the last 3 seasons, every season. Just a remarkable player. And losing him, and then you lose Peppers, and then they obviously already traded Judon. Like, this defense took so many hits. You lost Barmore. It's just tough to win games with this roster as is. But when they're playing like that, it's going to become impossible. And Jerod Mayo said after the game, the team's playing soft. They are, frankly. They had no answer for Tank Bigsby. Trevor Lawrence, once he got comfortable after those first 2 series where it didn't go his way, he started lighting it up, and that's all she wrote. They had the punt return touchdown. The game turned on its head very quickly, and as the defense is just getting torched, the offense stalled out, I would say fully because of the play calling, because they were running plays that didn't work. There were screen plays that didn't work. The Jaguars caught onto that. It's like this offense needs to just turn to what's working, and that's the arm of Jerod Mayo. Jerod Mayo could have single-handedly won the Patriots that game. I really do believe. They ended up losing by just 2 possessions. I think there were 2 of those drives that could have easily became touchdowns if they let Jerod Mayo just throw the ball, but that's not how it went. The other thing I'll touch on, Jalen Polk, as I mentioned before, I'll talk about him soon. I don't know what's going on with him. Had 3 drops in this game, and he obviously had that really bad slip, that gaffe, frankly, on the 2-point conversion attempt after the Patriots' second touchdown, where he was on like a boot route, and he just like went in and out, and he slipped on the out, and the throw is incomplete. So I don't know what's going on there. It seems like it might be a mental thing. Jerod Mayo says he expects more from him. He posted that super cryptic thing on Instagram yesterday with the ... and the peace sign. I don't know what's happening there, but it's definitely concerning for your second-round pick to be playing this way. And Jalen Polk, like the thing with him is that he was pitched to us out of college from Washington as a super low-floor guy, just a reliable pass catcher, not going to do anything flashy. But this floor is like, below the ground, honestly, where he is right now. He's just not producing. He's gotten worse as the weeks have went on, which makes me think that it's a mental thing. Like, I don't think he's a bad player. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, or that he's a bust quite yet. I just think he's going through some mental hurdles that happens with some rookies, and he needs to get over it. He needs to figure it out and put together a solid game. I wouldn't be surprised if he was benched in next week's game. It's just like, you have to do something. You can't just let him keep going out there and playing if he's going to put together performances like these. You need to get him to figure it out some way or somehow, especially next week against a Jets team that's tough. So we'll see what happens there. But regardless, the decision to go for 2, I understand it's a philosophical thing, and Jerod Mayo said that after the game. I would have saved it because by going for 2 and not getting it, you're now putting the defense in a situation where like they've lost all their morale because it is a 2-score game now. You're down by 9 points. Whereas if you didn't go for it and you just took the point, you're guaranteed a 1-possession game. And that, I think, could have fired the defense up when, frankly, they needed some juice. I understand the other perspective that Jerod Mayo said where, well, I don't know, because we want to know exactly what we have to do. Sure, I understand that part, but a 1-possession game is a 1-possession game. And to me, I would save it till the end because it would juice up the defense more. And they needed something. I mean, like, imagine how much different that end-of-game sequence would have felt if it was just a 1-score game. Meanwhile, what happened instead, the Jaguars drove down and scored another touchdown. So, I don't know. Or maybe it was a field goal. Either way, it wasn't great. Patriots ended up still needing 2 scores. And Drake May was slinging that thing, but too little too late. So, like I said before, this game to me falls not entirely, but mostly, this game to me falls on the coaches. Now, Jerod Mayo, Alex Van Pelt, DeMarcus Covington, you have to look at their tenure so far with the Patriots as a failure. And yes, this is a rebuilding team. Yes, there's a lot that needs to be done before this team can actually be a true title contender, but there have been mistakes that have been so egregious and decisions that have been so head-scratching that has cost this team to lose more games. Not starting Drake May right off the bat, I think it was an interesting call. I think Jacoby Brissett winning that first game put a lot more confidence in him than he deserved. If you watch the film from those first 4 games that Jacoby played, or 5 games rather, there were receivers open all the time. He couldn't find them. It's clear that Drake May is playing better now. The one thing I will say is that because he got those 5 weeks to sit behind him and learn, maybe, but to me it's just like, you're not going to get better at football unless you just go in and play football. And that's why all the other rookie quarterbacks who started week 1 are all thriving right now. And I think Drake May is going to get there. I mean, he's already got 1 less passing touchdown than Patrick Mahomes. So, like, he's off to a hot start. I believe he's the first quarterback to throw for 5 touchdowns and 500-plus yards in his first 2 starts since Dan Marino. So that's impressive stuff. And obviously, this is a remarkable start, albeit they lost twice. So interesting decisions there, but really the biggest thing, like what I mentioned before, is just the play calling. Offensively, I don't think that Alex Van Pelt has done a great job at all. I think they're running the ball too much and forcing it because they want to have a 2-dimensional offense, but it's just not working. They're getting stuffed at the line, especially yesterday. Like, we know that Jacksonville's best elements of their defense is the front 7, right? Where they got Trayvon Walker, Eric Armstead, Josh Hines-Allen, guys that are, all pro guys. And the secondary is terrible. Secondary ranked last in the NFL. So the plan should be mostly focused on passing. And they ran the ball too much, I think, especially when it wasn't working. Ramondre might still be hurt. Antonio Gibson has been bad. JaMychal Hasty's whatever. Like, he's a third-string running back. You shouldn't have to lean on him to get the majority of your carries. But I just think that they really should have just unleashed Drake May in yesterday's game, and they didn't do it as much as I would have wanted. I think he should have thrown for 300, 400 yards. I believe he had just around 250. Not enough, in my opinion. I think he should have really been given the green light to go ahead and light up that defense because they wouldn't have had any answers for him. We've seen it in Jacksonville's games. In last week's game when they played Chicago, Caleb Williams and the Bears just poured it on him through the air. And that should have been the similar game plan going into this game, and it just hasn't been. So it's just decisions like that that just really make you scratch your head. I don't think that they have a hold on this defense. Yes, they have lost a lot of their vocal leaders, and they're like, you can't control injuries, you can't control whatever is happening with Jabril Peppers. But regardless, like, it's so undisciplined. There's so many penalties. It's just stuff that you would frankly never see under Bill Belichick, and now we can get to that conversation. Would this team be better than 1-5 if Bill Belichick was still running the show? Now, obviously, it's all speculative. Would Bill have drafted Drake May? I don't even think so. I think he would have traded back, went with a guy like McCarthy or Bo Nix. But if Bill was planted this roster with Drake May on the team, I would think that they'd be sitting at 3-4, maybe 4-3 even. They would have won the Miami game. I think they would have won the Seattle game, and they definitely would have won yesterday's game. So 4 wins, I think, because the similarities between all those games was that the defense, frankly, let them down. The other similarity was that Jacoby Brissett couldn't put up enough points on the board, but the defense didn't help. And if you think back to last year's season, and Devon Godshaw said this last week after the game, yes, they lost a lot of pieces, but they were good last year. It was a good defense last year. They held the Chargers to 3 points in that one game. They were holding high-powered offenses and keeping the offense in games. The offenses couldn't capitalize because they had Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, who were just bad. So I think Bill Belichick being here, they would definitely have a much better record. Am I saying that it was a mistake to let Bill go? No. I think it was a time for a change of scenery. But I'm not surprised that people now are saying, well, why did they end up firing Belichick? Because Jerod Mayo hasn't done a great job. AVP and Covington haven't done a great job. So I see the point. I see the point. I think Belichick would make this team a lot better than it is. I think he'd have them at 4-3. Who knows? Who knows what the right call was? Who knows? Maybe in 3 years, Jerod Mayo will bring this team to an AFC championship, and they'll be in like a Lions-like situation where they're perennial contenders and they have a young core that they can rely on for the future. Who knows? But as of right now, Patriots fans, we miss Bill Belichick. It would have been nice to have him yesterday for sure. But then again, I don't know if he would have drafted Drake May, and you need a foundational quarterback piece like Drake May to be successful in today's NFL. And the positive news for Patriots fans is that he looks the part. He impressed again yesterday. I don't put the loss on him at all. Limited his turnovers yesterday. I don't think he had any. I don't think there were any turnovers in yesterday's game for either side. So, yeah, I'm impressed with Drake May. I think everything else needs to be figured out, starting with Jalen Polk. What are they going to do with him? And going forward, like, what can they really build on here besides just the quarterback position? The offensive line, I feel like, has been a little bit better. So next year's draft is going to be huge. I think next year's draft could be one of the biggest ones in this franchise's history because it's really going to put them either on a good path or a bad path and determine the immediate future of this franchise. So next up, we have the Patriots versus the Jets. Let me just see exactly what time that is before I start talking out of my butt here and give you an official prediction. I do expect Drake May to cook again because this Jets defense has been a lot worse than I think a lot of people were expecting. It was on display last night. Russell Wilson's first start of the year hung 35 on their heads, and they just cooked the Jets last night. They did just trade for Devontae Adams, so that's obviously a really, really talented offense that the Patriots are going to have trouble defending. We already saw them have trouble defending Aaron Rodgers in that Week 3 showdown, which albeit was in East Rutherford, but now they're in Foxborough. But they're going to have a really, really tough time defending Aaron Rodgers and Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams and all the weapons that they have on that offense and a solid offensive line. That game is at 1 o'clock on Sunday. I think Drake May will do well again. I think he'll do well in every game that he plays, frankly. But I don't see the Patriots coming away with this one at all. I think we're looking at 1-7. I do think they can win the week after against the Titans. We'll cover that game in great depth when it's coming up, but this one, I just don't see it. You never know, though, because the Jets are really a hot and cold team. They're 2-5. They only have one more win than the Patriots, which is crazy to think about, considering the talent discrepancy. But yeah, I'm going to go Jets winning that one 30-13. I don't think it'll be that close, just like the Week 3 game wasn't that close. I will definitely take the Jets in that one. The talent discrepancy is just too big. Even though they do have a new coach and they're still figuring out their identity on both sides of the ball, it's just too tall of a mountain for the Patriots to climb. And with that much talent on the roster, the Jets have to be good eventually. Let's move on, because tomorrow we have a team that we actually expect to win. I think I said the same thing in the transition last week. But the Celtics kick off tomorrow night against the Knicks at TD Garden after their ring ceremony, after they are presented the NBA championship. And it is going to be a movie, man. I'm so beyond excited for this Celtics season, because last season was just such a amazing experience to be a part of. And now they have all the same players, the same coach, and they're just going to run it back again. And I really do believe that they have a really good chance. So what I'm going to do here is do my full in-depth season predictions. I'm going to give you who I think will win the title, if that's not obvious enough. The Eastern Conference predictions, a record prediction, who they'll play in the finals, and I'm going to go award by award, MVP, Rookie of the Year, Most Improved Player, Defensive Player of the Year, but only for the Celtics, and just go through what I'm thinking for this upcoming season. So starting off, let's start with the big picture. Before we go into player by player and award by award, I think the Celtics are going to win the championship again this year, if that wasn't already obvious enough. They steamrolled the competition last year through the regular season and the playoffs. I think they will beat their win total from last year, even with Porzingis out for at least the first 2 months of the season, probably. And who knows how long he's going to be out after that, because he always has stuff that kind of pops up. But this team, top to bottom, has just figured out a solution that works in the NBA, that they have a perfect roster to execute, which is they're going to shoot X amount of threes, and if they make X percent, they're probably going to beat you. And they have specialists on the starting unit, the bench unit, the third unit even, that can execute this plan for them, which is play good defense, take open shots, win the game. It sounds simple, but it is a exact formula that the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla have come up with that works for them. And sometimes it makes you want to jump off a cliff, and sometimes it makes you elated with joy because it works. We saw it work a lot more last year than we did Mazzulla's first year. But for me, it is a masterclass of a plan that other teams are going to scramble to try to replicate. We have seen other teams, specifically the New York Knicks, try to craft their team sort of similar to how the Celtics are run now, and craft their team to beat the Celtics. Obviously, their combination of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby to defend Brown and Tatum, and they added Cat for the size element, and so on and so forth. But I just still think the Celtics are the ones to beat. I think they do play the Knicks in that Eastern Conference Finals series. So I have the Celtics finishing with the first seed, Knicks is second seed, and I think those two will play in the Eastern Conference Finals, barring injuries. I could see Philly creep into that mix. I could see Milwaukee as well, which is a team that I think a lot of people have forgotten about because they didn't make any noise in the playoffs last year. That was solely due to injuries. Giannis and Dame couldn't really play in that first series. They ended up losing to the Pacers. But they could still kick around if they are healthy. I mean, they still have a great roster. Not too different from the championship roster they had. You just swap out Drew Holiday with Damian Lillard, who each provide different elements, obviously. But the Bucks could still be hanging in there. Those are my four. I think those are everyone's four. The Pacers aren't quite there yet for me. I think Tyrese Haliburton is still a little bit too young. They have a good core. I just think they need a little bit more time. And the Magic, same thing. A little bit more time. I'm trying to think if there's any other teams that I'm really forgetting here. Chicago, no. It's like you just never know what to expect with them. I guess if everyone stays healthy, they can be like a 7 seed or an 8 seed. But the top four that I mentioned are really the ones that I am predicting to be the contenders here, and I think most people would tend to agree with that. So in the West, it's so tough to predict because I feel like a new team emerges in the West every year. I'm pretty high on the Pelicans this year as my team that I think is really going to surprise a lot of people. If you think about the acquisitions that they made, they brought in DeJounte Murray, who I think is super underrated. Had that one game against the Celtics last year where he just demolished them. So if you look at their starting lineup, like DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Herb Jones playing the 5, that's the only real big question mark is do they have enough size? But like that could kind of work, honestly, because we're seeing small ball lineups in the NBA succeed. And it's not like they're small across the board because Zion's obviously huge. Ingram's got a lot of height. And DeJounte Murray's a tall point guard. So they have height across the board, just not that center position. So we'll see how it works, how losing Valanciunas, who went to the Wizards, is going to impact them. But I think they could really make some noise in the West, to be honest with you. But not enough to, make the finals. I think that the Western Conference Finals is going to be Thunder versus Nuggets, and I think the Thunder are going to win. I know that's a popular prediction right now. I just don't want to come up with like a hot take just to come up with a hot take. That's what I think is going to happen. I think the Thunder are so good. They're so deep across the board. SGA has a real good shot at winning MVP this year. Jalen Williams, I think, can make a leap. Chet Holmgren can make a second-year leap. They just have so much talent, and they're all getting better as years go on. Now they have some playoff experience. That was my big thing with them last year is like, yeah, they're good on paper, and yeah, they're the number one seed, but I don't think they had the experience to advance in the playoffs. And we saw when they went against Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and that Mavericks team who had more playoffs experience, they fell short. So I think after that experience, that will help them this year, make it further. So I think we will see a Celtics-Thunder finals matchup. Celtics with home court advantage. I think this will be a close series. I think the Celtics are still going to win it, though, in 6 or 7. I think both teams have so much talent. They have so much defense, so much three-point shooting. Both young coaches who are from New England, actually. Mark Daniel for the Thunder is actually from, I believe it's Andover. So both from New England. It'll be a battle of the New England coaches, and I think the Celtics will take that one in 6 or 7 games. Winning a Game 7 would be pretty surreal at TD Garden, but hopefully, for everyone's heart rate's sake, it doesn't get that far. But that is my prediction for how this season is going to go. I'll put their win total at what was it last year? I think it was 63 last year. I really think they can push it to 66, 67, just based off how dominant they were in the playoffs, how dominant they were in the postseason, or preseason rather, and all of regular season last year. With or without KP, I just think they have it figured out. They really do. And I really like the trajectory of this team this year. I think they are definitely going to repeat. You never know what's going to happen with injuries. Knock on a million pieces of wood. But I think they're primed to make another title run this year. Bring home banner 19. Would be awesome. Let's get into individual player awards and what I'm sort of projecting for the roster this year. I'll start off with Rookie of the Year because it's the most boring one. There's really only one guy that could win this, which is Baylor Shireman. Yes, they also have Anton Watson, their second-round pick out of Gonzaga, but he's expected to... I'm pretty sure they signed him to a two-way deal, so he's going to probably spend most of his time in Maine. I don't see him getting a lot of run with the active roster. But Baylor Shireman is on a standard contract, standard rookie deal, so I do expect him to get some minutes when guys are resting or banged up a little bit. So I'll just talk about Baylor Shireman and where I am with him. I was high on him coming out of the draft. I think he's a great playmaker. Played quarterback in high school, so obviously has a great passing ability. He put that on display in Summer League. The defense and athleticism is going to be a concern with him, something that he has to improve on if he wants to last in the NBA. You saw him in Summer League and preseason getting bullied pretty bad, but guys with just more size, which is really just the transition that a lot of guys have to make going from that college level to the NBA level. Putting on more muscle, more weight, so they can hang with, these guys in the NBA who are freak athletes. What I don't like and what I hear from a lot of people is this idea that he's a Sam Hauser replacement. He shot well in college, but I think that his game and Sam Hauser's game are so different, whereas Sam Hauser is an absolute specialist on the catch and shoot. Shireman likes to really create more of his own shots. I think he would fit in the offense a little differently. He needs the ball more to thrive. And also, I don't like when people say that because it's like, okay, he's a white guy who can shoot threes, so he's the Sam Hauser replacement. I think people sleep on Sam Hauser so much and what he can do shooting a basketball. He's one of the best shooters in the NBA. Like, he's not just some guy that you can just find off the street and, you know, like, bring him in and he'll automatically start being amazing, which is how he ended up on the Celtics. Like, that's what happened with him, but that's not something that just always happens. Like, there's a reason why Sam Hauser is, like there's not a million Sam Hausers in the NBA. He's one of the only guys in the NBA who can really, like, hit shots at that efficiency, that consistently, and really from, like, anywhere around the perimeter, which is really impressive. So I don't like this idea that you can just take Baylor Shireman and, like, just throw him in there because Sam Hauser's too expensive. I don't think that was ever the front office's intention because it just doesn't make any sense. They play basketball in different ways. They have different play styles. Now, could Shireman become a spot-up catch-and-shoot guy? Maybe. He could work on that I don't know if he's going to get any time with the G League. I assume so, in Maine. But that's something he can work on if that's, you know, how Joe Mazzulla and Brad Stevens envision him fitting into this team. But it doesn't make any sense to me because that's not what he is. He's a great playmaker. He's got great dribble moves. He can shoot off the dribble, which is an important thing. Like I would almost compare his game more to Peyton Pritchard than I would to Sam Hauser, right? A guy who can shoot off the dribble, who's, you know, a little bit undersized, but he gets rebounds well, which is also what Peyton Pritchard does. So I would compare his game more to Peyton, but it's going to be tough for him to carve out any minutes on this team this year, being real. But since I'm going through all the awards, I just wanted to, you know, speak about him really quick because Rookie of the Year, he's really the only guy that I could see winning it for the Celtics. Let's move on. Let's do Defensive Player of the Year. Now, there's obviously a lot of guys on the Celtics that you could make the argument for because their starting five is all elite defenders, I would say. You could argue that Tatum's not elite, that he's just, like, very good, but to me, this is a starting five that is fully elite. The best defensive starting five in the NBA, one of the best defensive teams ever. So there's a lot of guys that you could argue here. I'm going to go with one of the two, Drew Holiday or Derek White here. Yes, Jaylen Brown consistently guards the other team's best player, but I think Drew Holiday and Derek White are just better at defense than he is. I would say that he's, like, the third best defender in the starting five. I think I'll go Derek White here just because of the shot blocking. Now, that's not any shade on Drew Holiday or even Jaylen Brown. I think you couldn't go wrong with picking either three. There's an argument to make. But with Derek White, it's just a shot blocking for me. He does so much on the defensive side of the floor. Like, Drew Holiday is stronger and known as the best perimeter defender in the NBA, but Derek White is also a great perimeter defender. But it's just what he can do with guarding all five positions, which, yes, Drew can do as well. But it's really just picking apples and oranges here. Derek White, I think, will also play more games. He has been somewhat of an Iron Man over the years, so he's got that going for him. He's going to get more blocks. Best shot blocking guard in the NBA, and it's not even really close. So I will give the edge slightly to Derek White, who I think is also considered to be more of a core piece on this team than Drew Holiday is. If they do have to move off of someone next year, I think the three guys that are 100% safe are Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White. You move on from either KP or Drew Holiday. So yeah, I'll give it to Derek White. I think his defense is such a key part of what makes his team hum, and I think he will continue to get those steals and blocks and guard whoever he needs to guard. He can guard any position on the floor, besides, like, you know, Wemby. We saw Wemby get that dunk on him last year, and Derek White didn't even go up for it. But he can guard almost anyone in the NBA, and I will take him to win Defensive Player of the Year. Moving on, let's do Most Improved Player. Now, this is a really interesting one. I'm going to give you three guys that I think could be the most improved player on the Celtics. They all have very different roles on this team. As I was thinking about this before I recorded, I didn't want to just pick one because I think you should keep an eye on all three of these guys to be the most improved player. Number one on my list for most improved, Jordan Walsh. Jordan Walsh was the Celtics second round pick last year out of Arkansas. And when I talk about most improved, the improvement here, he has to get up from just the ground floor. He had almost no minutes last year. Wasn't in the rotation at all. When he was, it was tough. His summer league was really tough. He shot poorly in the summer league. And I think a lot of people had frankly written him off at that point. But coming into this preseason, he had a really, really good showing. He shot the ball well. He played defense really well. And that's sort of like, I think the Celtics sort of envision him to be a 3-and-D guy if he can get his shot percentage up from 3. But he could even, drive to the basket well. He was doing really everything well when he was in the game. And I think a lot of impressive flashes for him. So when I say most improved, I think Jordan Walsh could be a guy that runs with the second unit a lot this season. That seemed to be the direction that the Missoula was going towards with the preseason. In that game where the starters rested against Toronto, he started. He seemed to be one of the first guys off the bench in a second unit. It will be largely matchup dependent because you don't really know how other guys are going to fit in the rotation. And with KP out, I assume you're going to have Cornette or Horford starting, and they're going to be the first ones off the bench. Pritchard's got to be the first one off the bench, and Hauser. But I think Walsh could be the next guy, maybe Tillman, but after Tillman. So I think he could be like the 9th or 10th man on this team. And I could see him getting a lot of minutes and surprising a lot of people with his play. Yes, we've never seen him perform consistently at an NBA level. Could that be something that rattles him? Could that be something that throws him off and gets him back to where he was in the summer league? Could he be doing too much, which is what we saw him do over the summer in Vegas? I don't know. I'm going to take a gamble on him. I really like his game. I really like him as a person. And I think that he's in for a pretty good season this year. And I think he can improve from a G League guy, doesn't get any minutes, to solid contributor, maybe like a Grant Williams type role on this team. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. My second guy for most improved, Peyton Pritchard, preseason P, postseason P, regular season P. I think he's going to ball out throughout this entire year. Here's the thing with Peyton Pritchard. People have said throughout his whole career, I guess maybe not his rookie year, but the last couple years, could he be a starter on the Pistons or could he be a starter on a team that needs a point guard? And I think that debate has been put to rest. The answer is obviously yes, he could. Whenever he gets an opportunity, he makes the most of it. He's so consistently good. He reminds me a lot his game of IT. Little guy, but just has an unreal work ethic. Can score from really anywhere on the court. Great passer. Great rebounder for his size as well. He has a really good feel for his positioning, especially on the offensive glass. So can create some second chance opportunities for you. I just love Peyton Pritchard's game. He's one of my favorite players on the team. And I think that he can really make a case. I'll tie this into another award for Sixth Man of the Year across the whole NBA. Not just for the Celtics, because I think the Celtics, with KP out, they're going to need some offense off the bench. And I think Peyton Pritchard is obviously going to be one of those first guys to come in. And I think he's going to have a really, really impressive showing this season because of his offensive talent. And I think he's gotten better and better every year. And this year, I think, will be a year that he goes from, fringe, 8th man to the established 6th man, leading the second unit of the Celtics and always consistently providing points. I think he could average 10, 12 points per game. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they really do turn to him more for offensive production off the bench. Could be a very similar role to what we saw from former Sixth Man of the Year, Malcolm Brogdon, right? Running the floor, consistently making shots. And I think I'm really excited to see what he can put together this year because I love him and I love his game. Moving on, last guy, most improved. I'm going to go with the superstar himself, Jason Tatum. I think Jason Tatum, if you look at him on the preseason rankings list for, NBA's rankings or Bleacher Report or whatever, he's consistently ranked in that 5-6 spot for best player in the NBA. I think he can make that leap to top 3 this year. And I think that could alone put him in the most improved player discussion for the team. He's already a superstar. He's not going to win it for the NBA, but I think he will really surprise a lot of people this year, specifically with his jump shot. His shot looks really good through the preseason. Looks like he doesn't have as much of a hitch in his jumper. Looks a little bit faster, a little bit smoother and cleaner. So I would expect him to improve his shot percentage this year. Without Kristaps Porzingis, as I mentioned before, this team is going to need offense from other sources, and I think that who else to turn to but Jason Tatum. I think he'll go back to averaging 30 points per game like he did 2 years ago. I just expect the most from him. I think he's gotten better every year. He has the motivation factor because he was benched by Steve Kerr in the Olympics. He still wants to be the best player in the NBA. He has that mentality. He's always going to think he's the best player on the court. And I trust him to keep that momentum going this year and just have a remarkable showing where his shooting percentage goes up, his points per game goes up, his assisting goes up. He's gotten much better as a playmaker every year, which nobody really ever talks about. But I think this is where he really makes that leap into a top 3 face of the league, especially if they win another title. But him individually, I think all of his stats across the board will improve, and I think he has a shot to be the most improved player on the team. If you want me to rank those 3 that I mentioned, I would say it goes Pritchard number 1, Walsh number 2, Tatum number 3 for who it could actually be when all's said and done. It's just hard for Tatum because he's already so high ranked, but I really do believe in his ability to take another leap. And Peyton Pritchard, I just think, is going to be going lights out this year. Really establish himself as a core piece of the Celtics. If they do have to move on from Drew Holiday, make them feel more comfortable about him taking over the starting point guard duties, even though you would obviously lose a lot of that defense that Drew Holiday provides. I think that could really work for the Celtics. So I'm backing those 3 guys to have breakout seasons. I mean, it's hard to say Tatum's going to have a breakout season because he's already Jason Tatum, but to have really solid seasons. And if that wasn't an indicator enough of my MVP for the Celtics, I'm going to go Jason Tatum. Yes, Jaylen Brown, it could be. He won Finals MVP. He won Conference MVP. I just really think that Tatum is out with a vengeance this year. And that's not to say that Jaylen Brown isn't. He has his own things to be pissed about going into the season. He didn't even make the Olympic team after winning Finals MVP and Conference Finals MVP. But Tatum, for me, is he had time to work on his game. He knows exactly what he has to improve upon. He knows what it takes to be a champion now. We have seen him improve year after year in some aspect of his game. He's always been a scorer, but we've seen him get better as a rebounder and a defender and a passer. And I think this is the year where he really puts it all together. He's like a typical, he is the ultimate NBA player prototype with his length, and he's good at a little bit of everything. There's not one thing that you're like, that's a weakness of his game, really. So I think he has the ability to really level it up. Could he win the actual NBA MVP? It's just hard because the Celtics are such a stacked roster, and they don't necessarily funnel all their offense through him like a Luka Doncic they do, or a SGA, or a Jokic. So I think it's going to be hard for him to win that award. But if the Celtics come back and win, like I said earlier, 65, 67 games, and he is averaging 31, 32 points a game and 10 boards and 8 assists or whatever, it's going to be hard to give it to anyone else, frankly. So I could see him winning MVP this year. I think he's definitely going to be the team MVP. He is the perennial face of the franchise. That's not to say Jaylen Brown will not also have a great season. I think Jaylen Brown will have an All-NBA season. Maybe we'll see him fall back on that All-NBA second team again this year. But Jason Tatum, to me, is the guy. He is the face of the franchise, and I think he's going to be even better this year than we have ever seen him be before. Moving on, let's talk about the Bruins real quick. Up and down, start to the season for them. They're now sitting at 3-3. It's I don't even know what to say too much because I've been so focused on the Patriots and the Celtics. What I will say is the fourth time looks remarkable. Pasternak has been fine. It's just the defense still needs to improve, and the toughness and the character, just keeping the goals out of the net. They lost to the Utah Hockey Club in overtime. Shout out to the Utah Hockey Club, by the way, who are a new team. They moved over from Arizona. I believe they've skated off 3 games now in overtime, so that's impressive. Once that game went to overtime, I was thinking, there's no way the Bruins can do this because whatever reason, the Utah Hockey Club just gets some juice under their skates and just, knows how to win overtime for some reason. So the Bruins just take a point from that one. So they're technically 3-2-1. But, the thing with the Bruins is they're going to have to show more if they want to actually be considered to be a Stanley Cup contender. They can't seem to find a way to beat the Panthers for some reason. They lost to them again. And that's probably who they're going to have to face in the playoffs, right? The Panthers are reigning champions. If you can't beat the Panthers, you can't go to the Stanley Cup Finals. So they're going to have to figure it out. I think the biggest discrepancy between the two teams is just the toughness element. The Panthers have guys that can really get up in you and, just win hockey games because of their toughness, like Reinhart. Like they have such, like Bennett. They have such good talent on that team that is able to, frankly, defeat the Bruins. And as of right now, I would take them to beat the Bruins in a 7-game series handedly. But that's just where it stands right now. We'll see where the Bruins go throughout the rest of the week and next week. Next week, I'll do more like an in-depth covering what I think is wrong with the team. But for now, it's like mediocre. They got to really try to find a way to string it together if they want to be considered a title contender. Some of their guys, like Marchand, needs to be better. And I know he's getting older, but he needs to be better. And I think that a lot of those guys along the back line, like I said, on defense, need to also improve for the Bruins to be a true Stanley Cup title contender. This has been Title Town Talk. I'm going to sign off here. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll be back next week to talk about the beginning of the Celtics season, Drake May and the Patriots probably losing to the Jets, and some more Bruins stuff for you. Of course, the Yankees are in the World Series now. Hopefully the Dodgers beat them. We hate the Yankees here in Boston, so don't want that to happen. But we'll probably start getting some Red Sox news relatively soon. And the goddamn Revs, man. Up 2-0 to Miami, and then you end up losing 6-2. I get it's the GOAT, but that was a frustrating way to end the season. That was ultimately very frustrating. I wouldn't be surprised if Caleb Porter gets fired. That was a disaster class of a Revolution season. I'm rambling. My name is Jackson Tolliver. I will see you next week. Peace.